Welcome guys to my first episode in my Python programming series, and today we'll be talking about getting started with Python. We'll be installing an editor in which we will write our code and do other stuff. We'll be talking about data types and variables. So first let's download our editor. First things first, we're going to type VS Code download. Visual Studio Code is an editor made by Microsoft, which can be used in Mac OS, Linux, and also Windows. So as you can see, I've got Windows here, so I'm going to install it on my Windows. So first thing it will do is it is going to install a setup, and from there it will start the process of installation. Install the editor in your computer. Now we'll just open a VS Code user setup here. It will ask you for an agreement, a license agreement. So you'll have to accept that. Next. This is an additional task. So if you want to create a desktop icon, go ahead and click here. Go to next. And now the final window will appear. It will ask you ready to install the tasks that it has to perform, all this stuff, and then you just have to click install. Now I've already installed VS Code here in my system, so I won't be needing to install it, but it is a smooth process. Once you click install, it will start installing, and once you're done, this is what it will look like. So let me just a minute, let me open my VS Code editor. Okay, just a minute. Yeah. Okay. So this is what it should look like. Once you start your VS Code, this is what it looks like. Now what you're going to do basically is open a folder. Now I've created a folder here. You will need to create a folder for storing all the Python files in there, the things that you are going to do. I've got a folder named tutorial. Let's open it. Yeah. So this is our folder. Now from here you can create a new file. Suppose I've already created a file, but I'll show it to you how it's done. Now keep this in mind. Whenever you're making a Python file, you need to add .py afterwards, so that it can run through the Python interpreter. Okay, yeah. And the next thing that you're going to do basically is you're going to install an extension, an interpreter for Python, which will allow the computer, the system, to read the code and generate an output. So here you need to go into extensions and then type Python, and then you'll get here a package made by Microsoft, and this is the amount of people who have installed it on their VS Code editor. You will have to install this and then enable it. I've already done that thing, so as you can see here. Now let's get started. Okay, so before I start, I just need to show a few things about VS Code. Okay, so first things first, if you want to open a file, you can open it here, and also for opening a folder. If you want to close a file, you can close the folder from here also. Now this is the script area. This is the area where you basically write all your code. Okay, these are the files that you've opened up, the tabs like you have in your Google Chrome and other things. This is an explorer where you've got your folder open. This is a search bar. Then this is an important thing, extensions, from where you can download interpreters for various languages. Suppose you're using JavaScript. JavaScript is a language that is used in web development especially. So you can download an interpreter for that from the extensions market. Then the next thing is the console. Okay, just a minute. Yeah, this is the terminal, also known as console. This is where your output will get. So I'll just show you a sample statement here. Print this is the output. Yeah, so let's run that and see what we get as the result. This basically, here is where you'll get your result. Okay, yeah, so this is our output. And so today basically I'll be introducing you to Python, and we'll get started. Okay, so basically Python, it's a common used language. It is very popular in web development, gaming, and many other fields, even in data analysis. So it is a great language, and it's top institution like top companies like Google, Microsoft, and even YouTube use it. So let's get started. Okay, now today in Python we'll get started with data types and variables. Okay, now before I start with data types, I'll need to teach you what variables are, so that we can understand data types. Okay, so as the word suggests, the name suggests, it is just a variable. Just like a variable is basically, as in maths, it is anything you assign a value to. So suppose I've got a variable x here. Now the value of x is 1. And how do you write it in Python? You basically write it, just a minute, yeah. You basically write it using x. You first put the variable name, and then you put an equal to sign and the value. It could be a word, it could be a number, it could be a decimal, and even a list. We'll talk about these lists and all that stuff. So let's get started. So this is a variable. Now I'll show you an example here. We've got x is equal to 1, y is equal to hello. I've created two variables here, and if I print them, print statement basically gives us the output in the terminal, the one that I used earlier. Okay, so if I print x and even print y, then I would get an output here. Just a minute, yeah, an output as 1 and hello, because the value of x is 1 and the value of y is hello. Yeah, so these basically are variables. This is the print statement. Print statement allows you to print anything in the console. Okay, so that's it for variables. Now let's talk about data types. Data types basically are different types of information or values in Python. Just as you assign a value to a variable, suppose I've got a value of 1 to a variable which is x, and then another value which is hello, and another value which is a decimal 1.1, and then another value, I'll just name it as q, it is a list. Okay, so these basically are the 4 data types in Python. There are 4 data types in Python, and we'll go through them one by one. So first let's start with integers. Integers, as the name suggests, are integers. Integers meaning numbers. Okay, so the integers in Python are represented using the int, which is just their calling function. So if I've assigned, if I put a variable here, x is equal to 1, and if I print type of x, okay, so the type function basically gives us the type of the value, like what type is the value. That's the best explanation I can come up with. But if we run this, we get the output here as int. I'll just zoom it a little bit. Yeah, so as you can see, we've got the value here as int. Okay, the type. So this is what integers are. Now let's talk about operations on integers. As you know, in maths you can perform operations on integers, and operations are basically addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. These are the 4 operations that we know of. You can also perform them in Python. For example, I've created a variable here, x is equal to 1 plus 1. Another variable, x is equal to 1 minus 1. Okay, and now z, x is equal to 2 times 2. Now here the thing is that multiplication sign isn't represented as an x. It will give us an error. It is represented using the star that you've that is on your keyboard. Okay, and then a division operation. Division operation is just this, 2/2. Okay, so the addition operation is displayed using the plus sign. The subtraction is represented using the minus sign. Multiplication is represented using the star, something like that sign. And then division is represented using the slash sign. Now if I print each of these variables, just a minute, Z and then Q. Yeah, if I print each of sorry, this is not, this is Q. Okay, if I print each of these variables, we would get the given output here, as we can see. Okay, so let me just brief it to you. This is our output. Now when we print x, we get the value of 1 plus 1. What is 1 plus 1? 1 plus 1 is 2, obviously, as you can see here. 1 minus 1. 1 minus 1 we've printed by the value is 0, because 1 minus 1. 2 times 2, which is 4. 2 into 2. Yeah. And then q, which is 1. Now here, as you can see, the answer is coming in a decimal, which is a data type in Python. We'll talk about that later. Now as you can see, these are integers basically. Okay, now let's move forward to strings. Okay, strings. Now strings are anything that comes between these two captions. Okay, anything. It could be a word, it could be any number, it could even be a decimal, anything, any sentence. Like this is a sentence. I'll create another variable which is word, and another one is equal to any number, and then in another variable final, I'll need to name this differently, 1, and then finally and another variable here, which is a decimal. So anything that comes between these two brackets or captions, whatever you call them, is a variable. Now also these captions could be represented even using the double quotation mark. Okay, you could do it with a single quotation mark or a caption, or even a double inverted comma or double caption, anything you call it. Okay, so if I remove this, x is equal to, I create a variable something like a word, and if I print type of x, and I would get the output as just a minute, yeah, string. Okay, so the type of x is string. String is anything that comes between these two brackets, or captions, anything you call it. I call them brackets, but like in different areas you call it differently. So it could be a number. I just recall that again. It could be a number, it could be a decimal, it could be a sentence, is a boy, or something like that. Anything that comes between these two brackets. Okay, that is what we call as strings in Python. Now let's talk about floats. Floats are just basically like integers, but they are decimals. Okay, so the output that we got earlier, this 1.0. Now if we put the same value here, 1.0, and if I print its type of x. Okay, so if I run this code, I would get the answer as a float. Now float is anything that is a decimal, any integer that is a decimal. So even if I put 1, 2, 2, 4, 3, something like that, written that there, yeah. So if I run this, I would get the output as a float. Okay, anything, any decimal. Okay, now let's move forward to type conversion. We're left with list. Sorry, I forgot about that. So now lists is basically like a combination of different values. For example, I've got this list over here. This is a list. It is a combination of different values. We've got a value of 1, and another value 2, and another value 3, another value 4. I'll be making a separate video on lists because they are really complex and really important if you want to improve your Python skills. They are really important, trust me. Now here I've got a list consisting of integers. Okay, I could make a list even of even consisting of strings. For example, like A, B, C, and D. This is also a list. It has 4 values, which all of them are strings. So I've got this A, which is a string, B, which is a string, C, which is a string, and D, which is a string. You can also make them using floats. Okay, so 1.0 to 1.1.2, 2.3, and another one 4.5. Yeah, this is also a list. And even you could make a mixed list with one value which is an integer, one value which is in string, one value which is a float. I'll just demonstrate it to you. Q is equal to 1, then a string, then a decimal 10.32. This is a list. All of these variables here are list. If I print the type, just a minute, print type X. I'll copy the statement and then I'll just change this Z and Q. If I run this, then I would get the output as float. The type, all of them are floats. Okay, list, sorry, I forgot about that. Yeah, all of them are lists. The X is a list, Y is a list, Z is a list, Q is a list. If you still don't understand what lists are, I'll upload in another video, so there's nothing no need to worry about that. So these are basically the 4 data types that we've got in Python. So now let's start with type conversion. Did you know that you could convert data types value into different data types? So suppose, let me just write the heading. If I've got something like x is equal to 1, x is equal to 1. So we all know that this is a string, as I told earlier. Anything that comes between these two captions is a string. But when you tell a layman looking at this code, he would say that this is a number. And to prove him right, this is a number. But in the Python sense, this is not a number. This is the string. Okay. So how to convert this into a number and prove a layman right? So what you're going to do is very simple. You're just going to type int outside, which is the denotation of a integer, int type. And if you print the type of x, now it's converted into an integer type. Okay, so if you print its type, then it would come, the output would be an integer here. You can convert this string into an integer, but this does not work for every string. Okay, so if I've got a word here, okay, so if I run this, then it would give us an error. Okay, because h is not a number. You cannot convert something that is not a number into an integer. That does make sense, right? You can convert any number into an integer, but not any word into an integer. But you can convert any integer into a string. And now I'll just show it to you. If I've got an integer, let me just, yeah. If I've got an integer such as 2, now I want to convert this into a string. So how will I do that? I'll just use the same method we used for converting a string into an integer. I'll be typing string outside, str outside, and then I'll put 2 into brackets. So what do you call these? The curly, no, round brackets, something like that. Yeah. So if I run this code, it would give us an output like string, because we've converted this into a string using this function that we've got, str2. You can convert anything. So it could also be a float. If I've got a float here, 2.1, I could convert that also into a string. You can convert anything into a string. You can also convert a list into a string. For example, I've got 1, 2, 3. Then even if I print the type of the value x, the variable x, I would get the output as string. You can convert any of the 3 data types into a string, but for integers it is very limited. You can only convert a few strings into integers, which are numbers. as I told earlier, you can convert all of the floats. So you can now, let's talk about converting floats which are decimals into integers. How are we going to do that? It's really simple. If I've got a decimal like this 1.0 and I want to convert that into a float, so I'll type float outside and just like that. So as you know, this is what we got as output when we divided 2 by 2. We don't want this. We want it to be a normal number so that it looks easier to read and understand. So how are we going to do it? We'll just convert this float, which this is a float, right? This is a decimal. So we need to convert that into an integer. So, we'll just type int and I'll run this code. I'll get the output as int. I've converted this into int, and how does it look like? So let me just print x. Now we've converted this into an integer. There's no 0.0 at the end. Okay, so this is how you convert. But what about this 1.1? How do you convert this into an integer? So let me just show it to you. It will convert into an integer the value that you've got before the decimal point. So even if I've got 1.9, it will get converted into 1. So it will just take the value that is here and put it as an integer. Okay, so now we've talked about how to convert an integer into how to convert a string into an integer. We've talked about how to convert an integer into a string. We've talked about how to convert a float into a string, how to convert a list into a string, how to convert an integer, a float into an integer. But now, how to convert a string, integer or float into a list? Like how to do that? Now let me tell you the truth, that is a very complicated process, but let me just show it to you how it's done. So suppose I've got a number like this 31271 and I want to convert it into a list. So I'll create another variable, or I'll just print the statement directly. Print, you'll go open up square brackets and then you'll type like int x for x in str x. Yeah, now if I print this, I would convert this integer into a list. But do you understand this thing here? For what is int, for what is in? So this is a very complicated process here, and if you want to view the detailed video about this, I've already posted a video on my channel. So if you really want to learn how to convert any integer or string into a list in Python, then you should watch that. But if you are a complete beginner, then I would suggest discontinue with my course. I'll explain what is the for function, what is the in function and all that stuff. Now we've talked about type conversion, we've learned about variables. And what else do we need to learn? Like what else? Okay, so I think that's it for today. I've introduced you to pretty much 5% of the total Python language. Python's really small, but you can expand it easily. So today we learned about variables first. What are variables? Now let me just recap everything to you, okay? Variables, anything you assign a value to. It could be x is equal to 1. This is a variable. X is equal to any string. This is a variable. Variable is anything you assign a value to. Now data types. There are 4 data types that are in Python. First is an integer. Integer is any number. For example, if I've got x is equal to 1, this is an integer. The value of x is an integer. X is equal to hello. Now this is a string. The second data type is a string. String is anything that comes between these single inverted commas or the double inverted commas. So if I put h here, this is a string. Okay. Now the third data type is 1.2, which is a float. The third data type is a float. Float is in any decimal. So suppose if I've got 1.2, this is a float. Okay. Now the next thing is lists. Lists are really complicated. It took me at least 1 month when I started Python to learn them completely. But I'll upload more videos about lists in Python, broadly covering this concept. So stay tuned for that. Then we learned about type conversion, now how to convert an int into a string and that stuff. So I guess that's it for today, guys. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that you can stay tuned for such more videos that will be coming in the future. I'll be in the next video, I'll be talking about basically taking an input from the user and lists. That's what I'll be covering in the future, the next video that will be coming.